Ladies and gentlemen, there is a kind of strength that doesn't shout. It doesn't argue. It doesn't demand the spotlight. It waits. It trusts. And in the quietness of that trust, it unlocks the power of heaven. Tonight, I want to speak to you about a powerful truth. God's timing requires your silence. There are moments in life when everything inside us wants to move, wants to speak, to act, to fix. But says, be still. When the storm is raging, when doors stay shut, when answers don't come, God says, be silent and know that I am God. My friend, silence is not surrender. It is strategy. It is not giving up. It is giving over. In the silence, God is not absent. He is arranging. He is shifting the pieces of your life into divine alignment. But he does it in his timing, not ours. In a world where everyone has something to say, where opinions flood our screens and reactions are instant, there is a rare power in staying silent. Silence is not weakness. It's not defeat. It's not apathy. In fact, it may be the most courageous choice you ever make. Because when God is moving, he often tells you to stop talking, stop planning, stop trying to control, and simply wait. You see, silence is strength. Not the kind of strength that flexes or boasts, but the kind that trusts. The kind that says, even though I don't understand what God is doing, I know he is doing something. That is strength. That is faith in action. There is a story behind every breakthrough, and many of those stories have a chapter of silence. Maybe you're in that chapter right now. The door hasn't opened. The answer hasn't come. Your prayers seem to hit the ceiling. People are watching your life and asking, why haven't you moved yet? Why haven't you said something? Why haven't you fought back? But they don't know the secret you hold inside. God told you. God told you to trust him. And in your silence, there's a power they can't see. This isn't just patience. This is obedience. This is surrender. Because silence doesn't mean you've stopped believing. It means you stop fighting a battle that only God can win. It means you've stopped trying to force something that only God can build. It means you've put your confidence not in your ability to speak or act, but in God's perfect timing and wisdom. Sometimes, silence is the loudest statement of faith you can make. When others would argue, you stay silent. When others would panic, you stay still. When others would post, shout, complain, you remain quiet because you've heard from heaven. And God doesn't need your noise. He needs your trust. Think about this. Every seed grows in silence. The roots dig deep in darkness before the plant breaks the surface. What you call waiting, God calls growing. What you see as silence, God sees as preparation. So don't curse the quiet moments. Don't run from them. That silence, my very place where your strength is being restored and your future is being shaped. You're not being overlooked. You're being cultivated. And when God is ready to reveal what he's been doing in the dark, the world will see what silence and trust in God can truly produce. So hold your peace. Stand firm. Let your silence be your strength. Because God is not late. He is not distant. He is setting the stage, preparing the promise, and getting ready to do what only he can do. Your job is not to explain the silence. Your job is to live in it with faith, knowing that God's timing requires your silence. And when he's ready, he will speak. Have you ever felt like your prayers are echoing into emptiness? Like you've been doing everything right, believing, hoping, staying faithful, and still nothing is changing? That space, that in between, where it feels like heaven is quiet, is where faith is tested and matured. Because silence doesn't mean God has forgotten you. No, in fact, it means he's drawing you closer. Silence is the soil where faith grows. Faith isn't built on fireworks. It's not shaped in the moments where everything feels good and goes right. True faith is forged in the quiet, in the waiting. It's in those moments when God whispers, "Do you trust me when you can't trace me?" That's when real faith takes root. That's when it becomes something more than words. It becomes your anchor. Some of you are in a season where nothing makes sense. The job hasn't come. The healing hasn't arrived. The relationship is still broken. And everything inside you wants to shout, wants to move, wants to do something. But there's a quiet stirring in your spirit saying, "Wait, be still. Let me be God." And that's the hardest part of all, doing nothing when you're desperate to do something. But don't mistake your stillness for stagnation. Don't confuse God's silence with his absence. He is closer than you think, and the silence is not empty, it's pregnant with purpose. It takes faith to worship when the breakthrough hasn't come. It takes faith to say, "God, I still trust you," when everything around you says you shouldn't. But that moment, not the loud, dramatic gestures, but the quiet, unwavering trust that says, "Even if I don't see it yet, I know you're working." God isn't just interested in giving you something. He's interested in growing you into someone. And the silence is where that growth happens. You're not being punished. You're being prepared. God is building something in you that can't be rushed. It has to be deep before it can be wide. It has to be real before it can be revealed. So don't resent the quiet. Rest in it. Let it build something unshakable in you. Because the faith that survives the silence will flourish in the storm. And when God does speak, when he moves, when he answers, it won't just be about the blessing. It'll be about the believer you became while you waited. Hold on. Stay quiet. And trust that while you're waiting, God is working in ways you can't yet see. That's not weakness. That's faith. That's power. And that's where miracles begin. Have you ever stood at the edge of a promise, only to feel like nothing is happening? You've prayed, fasted, believed, and still the door remains shut. Let me tell you something that may shake your perspective. God's delays are not his denials. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not going to. What feels like a pause in your story might just be the setup for your greatest chapter. We live in a world that celebrates quick results, instant answers, fast fixes, same-day delivery. But God doesn't operate on human timelines. He's not rushing. He's not pressured by your deadlines. He works in perfect timing, and often that timing looks like delay to us. But delay is not rejection. Delay is preparation. It's development. It's alignment. Imagine if God gave you what you were praying for right now. Would you be ready for it? Would you know how to carry it, protect it, steward it? Sometimes God waits because he's not just preparing the blessing, he's preparing you. You're asking for the promotion, but God is building your character. You're asking for the relationship, but God is healing your identity. You're asking for the platform, But God is humbling your heart. The delay isn't punishment, it's protection. Because God loves you too much to give you something you're not ready to handle. When Jesus heard that Lazarus was sick, he didn't rush to heal him. He waited. He delayed. And in that delay, Lazarus died. People were confused. They thought Jesus had missed the moment. But what looked like a failure in timing was actually a setup for a miracle no one saw coming. Jesus didn't come to heal Lazarus. He came to raise him. And sometimes God delays not to fix something, but to resurrect something in your life. Something that will bring him greater glory than what you originally asked for. You might be sitting in a season that feels forgotten, but I promise you God has not forgotten you. What feels like silence is actually divine strategy. He's aligning people, opening doors, setting up circumstances that your eyes can't see right now. And when the fullness of time comes, when all the pieces are in place, what he releases will be greater than anything you could have arranged on your own. So, don't quit in the delay. Don't let your heart grow bitter. Don't start speaking defeat. Stand in faith and let your silence be filled with expectation. Because the same God who promised is the same God who will deliver on time, every time. The wait is not wasted. It's working. And what's coming is going to be worth every second of the silence. Have you ever had to bite your tongue when everything inside you was screaming to speak up? Have you ever felt the fire of injustice, the ache of confusion, or the sting of disappointment and still you chose to say nothing? That's not silence out of fear. That's not apathy. That, my friend, is obedience. And in God's eyes, that kind of silence is worship. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is not what you say, but what you refuse to say. When the enemy whispers, speak up, defend yourself, prove them wrong, and you choose to stay quiet, you're making a declaration far louder than words. You're saying, God, I trust you to handle this better than I ever could. That kind of restraint isn't weakness, it's spiritual maturity. It's strength wrapped in surrender. Obedience in stillness is hard. Everything in you wants to take matters into your own hands. You want to post about it, argue about it, fix it your way. But when you walk with God, you start to learn that not everything needs your voice. Some battles are meant to be fought in silence. Not because you're powerless, but because He is powerful. You don't need to fight every critic, clap back at every insult, or rush to every opportunity. When you trust God's voice more than your own, you'll realize that your silence can echo louder in the spirit than your words ever could. There are moments when God says, do nothing. Not because He's doing nothing, but because He's doing something you can't see. And when you obey in that stillness, when you hold your peace, when you refuse to retaliate, when you sit in the tension without breaking, it's not passivity. It's praise. It's trust that worships God not with hands lifted or songs sung, but with a heart fully surrendered. Think about Jesus standing before Pilate, innocent yet silent, powerful yet still. The Savior of the world chose silence, not because He didn't have the words, but because He had the mission. He knew that His silence was fulfilling prophecy. He knew that obedience, even when misunderstood, would bring redemption. And the same is true for you. There will be moments when your silence will confuse people. Let it. You do. Oh. Oh. When you stay obedient, stay quiet, stay focused. Because when you choose stillness over striving, when you say yes to God by saying no to your own impulses, you are offering up the purest form of worship. Trust without proof, faith without evidence, obedience without applause. And that kind of worship shakes heaven. So the next time God says, be silent, don't resist it. Embrace it. Because that stillness is not empty, it is filled with holy purpose. Have you ever noticed how quiet it gets right before something breaks open? That tension, that stillness, it's not random. It's the silence before the shift. Some of you are standing in that moment right now. You've been quiet. You've been faithful. You've been still. And the enemy wants you to believe that your silence is evidence that nothing is happening. But hear me, breakthrough comes after the silence. In the Bible, there's a moment when the children of Israel are marching around Jericho, day after day, in complete silence. No shouting, no explaining, no questioning, just silent obedience. It made no sense to the natural mind circling a wall without a word. But then, after the silence, on the seventh day, after they had fulfilled the instruction to stay quiet, the walls came crashing down with a shout. But don't miss this. The shout didn't bring the power. The silence prepared the power. Your silence isn't wasted. It's not weakness. It's the stretch before the release. It's the deep inhale before the exhale of destiny. When you hold your tongue instead of arguing, when you wait on God instead of running ahead, when you stay planted instead of panicking, that's the kind of silence that heaven honors. That's the kind of silence that signals you're ready for what's next. You see, breakthroughs don't just happen by noise, they happen by alignment. And silence is often the final test before the shift. Will you trust Him when nothing is moving? Will you obey when it seems like your obedience is getting you nowhere? Will you remain faithful when the crowd falls away and no one's clapping for your consistency? Some of the greatest moves of God begin in silence. A whisper in the dark, a moment of stillness on the edge of something miraculous. Elijah didn't hear God in the fire, the wind, or the earthquake, but in the still, small voice. And that's often how breakthrough comes. Not loud, not flashy, but quietly, powerfully, unstoppably, after the silence has settled into your soul and stripped away every false sense of control. So, you've been quiet. If you've been waiting, don't rush out of it. Because the same God who called you into silence will call you into victory. And when He does, walls will fall, doors will open. But it won't be because you forced it. It will be because you were faithful in the quiet, and God honored the silence with supernatural power. Don't move too soon. Don't speak too fast. The silence is sacred, and right on the other side of it, breakthrough is waiting. So now, as you stand in the silence, maybe confused, maybe weary, maybe tempted to break the stillness with your own plan, remember this. God is not absent. He is not idle. He is intentional. The silence you feel is not the end of your story. It's the sacred space where God is preparing your breakthrough, your elevation, your answered prayer. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to force anything. All you need to do is trust. Trust that the God who spoke the universe into existence can work in your silence. Trust that your stillness is not delaying the promise, it's protecting it. And when the time is right, When the silence has done its work, God will move. God will speak. God will break through. So hold the line. Stay silent. Stay faithful. Because when heaven breaks the silence, everything will change. And you'll know it was never your voice that made it happen. It was your obedience, your surrender, your trust in God's perfect timing. And when it comes, it won't just be good, it will be glorious.